So I've now installed all of those packages. Sometimes when it's installing packages over in the console, you'll find a whole number of kind of warnings or messages. A lot of these messages are just about when it's putting something in there, it might find something it doesn't like and just remove it. Alright, it's just letting you know basically what's happened. But everything is fine here. Alright, it's just telling you what's gone on really. So you can just click clear and those go away. Now I did notice that when I converted some of these objects into Sprite 2Ds and UIs, and I come down, I've got a little bit of a warning message saying only textures with width height being multiples of 4 can be compressed to ETC2 format, which is the format that's represented here, this one. This is one of the main reasons why people recommend that when you bring artwork into Unity, particularly for UIs, that they are a multiple of 4. So for example 16 by 16 or 64 by 64 or 512 by 512 like this one. You know, that's a multiple of 4, so I'm not getting that issue. So what I've done on something like Small Bullet, just make sure I did accidentally put it on edited GUI, it should be on Sprite 2D and UI, is I've just changed the format to RGBA compressed ASTC 4x4 block, and that one's fine. Alright, I'm just going to do that with the rest. Okay, so this 4x4 block, just click apply and that will then get rid of that error. Well, it's more of a warning really. It's basically saying it's not getting compressed properly, so no point in trying to compress it if it's not working. We get the same thing going on here, so just make sure we go with this one. The crosshair as well. There we go. Alright, all sorted. Great. So now in our assets we'll find that we've got loads and loads of folders. Now the first thing I want to do actually is just click on this low poly FPS pack. In some of these you do have some readme files, so you can check these out. Just double click in order to open them. We've got a demo scene, weapon demo scene, and into handgun. So anytime that you want to open one of these scenes you can just double click. First of all however, I'll just save this scene that we're working on. So save as, I'll put it into a new folder called My Scenes, and I'll call this main scene. There we go. Now I can double click on this one to open it. Just kind of want to show you this. This is a fully working demo of these low poly hands. So what you can do here, I'll just mute the audio so you can still hear me talking, is I'll just press play and, well, okay. Now you can move this around by using your mouse and then just click in order to fire. Okay. Now unfortunately I think it works better when it's full screen actually, so just press escape to get out of that. Maximize on play. Okay, and then you get all sorts of really great little stuff here. Really great set with the hands, and then if I choose R I can then reload. It's already got its animations on there, which are really good, so we're going to be using these arms. Okay, but I just wanted to make you aware that this does have a fully working scene if you wanted to actually use that for any of your mobile games. Alright, we're not going to be using this particular scene, but if you wanted to, you could. Just going to go back to my assets and my scenes, double click. If these warnings are kind of getting on your nerves, like they are for me at the moment, just click on this little warning symbol and it gets rid of it. Now you can still be aware that it's got warnings, alright, because it'll give you the number, but it just won't display them now. So what we want to do then is actually start some kind of a layout. So let's go back to our scene view. And if for example you're not seeing this the way that it looks on mine, it could very well be that some of these are not checked on. So just make sure they're all fully checked. So I want to start with the Symmetry Halloween set, and I want to go to the Prefab Mobiles. This is where I'm going to be using most of my assets from. One of the great things about these is that they are very, very low poly. So let's, for example, take something like this. You can see it here. It's extremely low poly, but it's got that nice kind of painterly feel to it. And it's actually using an Atlas texture. Okay, so if I just click on this, basically all of the textures for all of the models are all contained within one texture. And this is really, really useful when working on mobiles. If you can find assets that use an Atlas texture, it's going to save your draw calls so much. Okay, as opposed to having every object with a separate material, a separate texture. First thing I want to do, I want to use one of these textures to actually display the ground. So I'm going to click on Game Object, 3D Objects, and I'm going to just put in the quad. A quad only has, I believe, 2 triangles. So if I just get to the side that's visible, and I go to wireframe, in fact shaded wireframe, there we go, 2 triangles, so it's really, really low poly. Alright, as opposed to a plane. Look at how many triangles a plane has. Alright, way too many. So keep it as a quad. So I'm just going to rotate this on the red so that it's perfectly straight. Now I can see that's changing the rotation on the X there, so I'm just going to set that to 90 degrees so it's perfectly on the ground. Change back to shaded. And I just want to click on quad, and I want to set its position in X, Y and Z to 0. So just click on these and press 0, 0, 0. Then double click on the quad and that will take me over to it. Now in terms of moving in Unity, you can use your middle roller mouse to roll in or out. That will cause zoom. Your right mouse button you can click and drag in order to change the angle at which you're looking. Left click and drag in order to select, or click anywhere to deselect, and then you can click and hold the roller in the middle of your mouse to actually pan around. Okay, so now I'm going to click on the quad and I'm going to change the scale of this. So instead of it being 1, I'm going to change it to about I'm going to change it to about 100, I think, and also on the Y as well. 100. Don't need to change it on the Z because it doesn't have any depth. Now it looks like I've added extra elements, but I haven't. This is actually a grid. You can switch the grid off at any point by clicking on this icon and it goes away. Alright, now if I click back on wireframe or shader wireframe, you can still see I'm only using 2 triangles. Very important. Try and keep it as low poly as possible. So now I just basically want to put one of these textures onto this item. So we've got something called floor 12. I quite like this. Or actually I think I like this floor 14 a little bit better because it's got these like little bits of grass. So I'm just going to click and drag, make sure you're in the scene view, click and drag this material directly on there and it will automatically stick on there. Now at the moment these are way too big. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to click on floor 14 where I've got my tiling. I'll set this to something like 65 by 65. That's too repetitive. Can you see it's like this tiling effect. So let's try 45 by 45. I think that's much more effective. Okay, yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. Now I just want to bring your attention to the shader type. It's actually using mobile unlit that supports a light map. You can find this by doing the drop down, mobile, and just this one, unlit. Alright, so it doesn't require any lighting at all. Alright, it doesn't even respond to any kind of lighting. So that one is extremely fast and is a really extremely fast shader that will work perfectly on mobile. Okay, and since the actual texture is this kind of cartoony look, this is exactly how it will look inside of the mobile. Okay, so now I want to find my main camera, in my game view, switch over to the game tab, this is currently what I'm looking at. Where my camera is located, and if you're not seeing this, your gizmos might be switched off, so just click on gizmos to get those switched on. And in fact, my 3D icons, I'll just make those a little bit bigger so that you can actually see those. This is currently where I'm based, right in the middle of this scene. So I'm actually looking that way, as you can see there, with the this is called a frustum, a camera frustum, and the camera will only render whatever is actually inside of this object right here. So it won't render anything behind the camera unless you rotate it around. So just want to make a couple of changes to the main camera. First of all, in the game, I don't need to see this sky in the background. This is actually using a skybox, which adds extra pressure to your mobile device and the CPU, etc. You can use a sky if you want, if you absolutely need it, but in this game it's just not necessary. So I'm going to take my clear flags, I'm going to change it to a solid color, I'm going to change my color to black. Okay, and that's just going to be so much faster to render, and it looks now like nighttime. My projection is currently on perspective. If you're going for a 2D game, you could go with something like orthographic, but let's just keep it on perspective. My field of view is vertical. Yeah, that's good. That's what I want. And if you want to zoom in or zoom out, you can choose your field of view to do so. Default is around 60, which works quite well. If you want to limit how much you can see, let's say 40. Notice now it's made that frustum a lot smaller. So it's actually rendering less items on the screen. So if you're finding that you are getting like really low frame rates, just try reducing that down somewhat. I mean, even though I'm now like really zoomed in on things, it's actually going to be rendering much less on screen at any one time. But I was quite happy with 60. So I'm just going to keep it at 60. Now my clipping planes, basically the near is an object to the camera before it actually clips off, before it becomes invisible. Well, I'm going to have some arms very close to the camera, so I want to reduce that down to 0.1. But in terms of far, that's way too much, 1000. Now if, for example, I went with 1, you can't see anything. 10, I can see a little bit. 100. Okay, I can actually see, I should be able to see the edge of that item now, so I'm halfway through, and in fact I could actually limit this even more because I'm right in the center of this. I should actually be able to just limit it to just 50, and now it's only rendering right up to the end of that item but nothing beyond. Okay, and if I rotate around it will be the same at that side. So now it's only having to render as far as 50 meters away from the camera, and that's going to once again speed up those frame rates. Our rendering path, although it's using graphic settings which are coming from the project settings and from the quality, it's actually using this. It's going to use this no matter what anyway. Alright, it's never going to override that. We can actually change our rendering path to a forward. Forward is recommended for mobile devices. What a forward rendering path will do, it will basically render everything just once. Okay, it will compile all the different objects and just render it one single time. It's extremely fast. Whereas if you went with something like, for example, deferred, what it will do, it will actually render each object multiple times. So if you've got objects in front of other objects, it will actually render them twice or 3 or 4 times. And if you've got multiple lights, it will render it each time there is a new light source. So it can actually render many times. It's a better result. It looks a lot better, but it's only really necessary on PC, kind of like on the PC setting. Forward is way better for mobile. HDR, don't need it, switch it off. MSAA, don't need it, can switch it off. MSAA is basically if you've got any multi-sample anti-aliasing, so to avoid those jagged edges. Once again, if you are getting jagged edges, just switch that one on. Okay, occlusion culling is basically if one object is in front of another object, it will then occlude that object so it won't render it. We're not going to have any need for that, so I'm just going to switch that off. Okay, there we go. Alright, so now we've set up our main camera, and what we'll do in the next video is actually start to lay out our objects.